I think the first thing we've got to look at is it is an art form.
Yes.
You know, in art history, you have period pieces, but you also have particular stages, or a bit like you get an Art Nouveau era, but then you'll get famous people, practitioners within that period.
Yes.
But I think it's fair to say Games Workshop really started off actually a school of painting, but that's now actually been subdivided, where you've got people like John Blanche with his sort of sepia colours and things like that, and but also in terms of skill set at the top end with Angel Heraldez. Sorry about butchering the pronunciation, but we're now actually seeing an art form in being practiced, and the biggest company behind it now, I think GW is now worth. John Stallard told me, I think it was 3 billion.
Yeah, it's very close to 3 billion apparently. Yeah, maybe a bit more now.
Yeah, and it's so the level of interest and commitment. I don't know how big Winsor and Newton, the paint people who do watercolors and oil colors, are, but I don't know if they're at anywhere near 3 billion.
Yeah.
And so if you think about the amount of people who've been involved at one point or another, but we're now seeing some of the stuff hit auction, and I think really the crown.
When you say some of the stuff, do you mean like Warhammer armies and stuff are turning up at auction?
Yeah. I've been seeing lots sort of regularly hit £500, but also there's eBay, and we've now got a group of shops called Troll Trader. I know they've got a shop in southeast London in Bromley, but I think they've got about 30 staff just selling second-hand minis.
Wow.
But I think the biggest market is undeniably eBay, but we're going to start seeing the top-end pieces come up, and I don't think it's going to be long before we find a Thunderhawk gunship on the Antiques Roadshow. This is what the collectors are buying, and it's and whereas,
you've got this worked out. You're trying to get on the Antiques Roadshow to be an expert, aren't you?
Yeah, but they won't let me, Lloyd. I keep turning up.
The number 2 Thunderhawk gunship. So in other words, the second one that was ever produced in metal is actually sitting in John Stallard's house. So if you can get John Stallard tucked into a good bottle of whiskey, while he's not looking, you can whip that out and get it into the old Antiques Roadshow.
I'm not surprised it's sitting in his house, because having assembled one of them, I can't imagine anybody else ever wanting to assemble one of those.
He didn't assemble it. It's still in the box.
Yeah.
It is still in the box.
The reason it's sitting is because it's too heavy to go on a shelf or be suspended from the ceiling.
But like I've been to John Stallard's place. I've been to the Perry's. These guys are sitting on treasure troves of memorabilia, real significant pieces from our industry's history. It's it is fascinating, and it once you do start to consider it an art form, you can see how this could pan out, and where value.
Actually, you've hit a really important thing, really, because with people like John Stallard or Perry's, a lot of those pieces have been featured in White Dwarfs. No one's going to argue with the provenance. That is dream provenance for an object. For one of the sort of early practitioners and the big movers in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
But also some of it's been featured in White Dwarf, so it's now what is termed a documentary piece.
Yes,
the piece that has been documented, and that all adds to the provenance. And I mean,
does that mean, Michael, just before you go in, everything we put on video becomes more expensive?
Well, tricky to say. It would help it if it was an auction, because you're not going to be arguing with is that a knockoff in the future. So actually, you two chaps do actually have quite a serious collection going, and a lot of it's documented.
Especially when you think of some of the weird esoteric things like the 3-ups from Parabellum's Conquest that are sitting on the studio shelf that were one-offs essentially.
Yeah, effectively one-offs. Yeah.
And it's strange because HeroQuest has obviously been talked about on occasion. I think Brian Ansell has the original master casts that were painted by Mike McVeigh for the HeroQuest box art. They're sitting in Wargames Foundry in their shelves there because they obviously owned the company before they sold it, and they took a lot of the GW stuff when they sold the company.
Yeah.
So when you think about, as far as a documentary piece, something with extreme provenance, there is the first set of HeroQuest miniatures painted that were used in the rule books and box art and on the back of the box prior to production. And then also painted by Mike McVeigh, probably one of the best known painters in the industry at that time.
Yes.
There's layers within layers there of just how it makes you wonder, because when you see things like a copy of HeroQuest sitting on eBay for $2,000 at the moment and it's unpainted. But when you actually think about something like that where it's an original casting, the first castings, how much would they actually possibly be worth?
Here's a question. If there's HeroQuest sitting on eBay unpainted and HeroQuest sitting on eBay painted, is the unpainted worth more because it's more pristine to the original than the painted version?
It depends, really. Some people will want just perfect, sealed in the box. But if you've got, but there's always going to be a market for well painted, really well executed miniatures, because some people don't have the time and all the skills, and that's where it comes in, really. But I think just going back to what Jerry said, it's just important rare pieces like that, initial pieces like that. I think we're going to probably see things like the Victoria and Albert Museum and the Museum of Childhood and things like that have a few objects like this, because otherwise I think they're losing sort of touch with generations who have gone by. They've got a few Star Wars figures and things like this, but they may have more stuff tucked away. But with the amount of interest in GW and that sort of big nostalgia hit, we're going to see these things, and they're not going to want going to want bog standard stuff. They're going to want the early stuff.
Yeah, it'll be like that for D&D as well, especially with programs like the Stranger Things popularizing D&D and showing off D&D in the 80s, and people are like, oh, I've got some D&D stuff from the 80s.
That's one of the things. I can't remember the guy's name from the shop on the Borderlands, but when you were talking to him, at the virtual con, he was saying he missed out on picking up a super rare D&D supplement that was only sold at a flower show in England for no reason, but it was a whole specific D&D scenario. It's like one of the first dozen that they've released, and it was specifically for it wasn't the Chelsea Flower Show, but it was a similar type of venue, and it was just so obscure and bizarre that there was no fans there, and now it's ultra rare. So you always get these little quirks popping up.
Also of interest, I mean, it's Christie's used to have model soldier sales. Here's one of their catalogs, and sometimes they're actually single vendors. This wasn't considered an important sale back in the day. It was a bit niche as part of their collectible departments, but I think this is going to happen again in the future at some point. But the sad state of the market, I think, is where you can get someone spending, I believe, I'm not absolutely sure, this was back in, I think it was about circa 2006, but there are going to be people who are interested in our industry who've done seriously well, and they're going to be competing against each other for the top stuff. But this is just, I apologize for bringing this abomination up, but this went for about 2.2 million.
I mean, that's priceless, really.
Yeah, you say you apologize for bringing it up. You've been champing at the bit to bring that up.
Yes.
But it's one of those things where the Christie's catalogue there, Britain's toy soldiers were massive. I know during the 90s, people picking up Britain's were paying top dollar for what were just enamel one coat figures. There was no detail, no shade, no highlight. They weren't particularly well done in the painting style of things, but the Britain's always had this sort of niche, and you see a lot of these larger scale figures coming out of Eastern Europe and Russia especially, where these days they command ridiculous amounts of money, but the work going into those hand painted figures are stunning. So the larger scale has always been floating in the background, the toy soldier scale, and it's strange that we haven't seen more of a migration to the sort of the early uptake of GW or Dungeons and Dragons or TSR, whoever it happens to be. At least not so far.
Yeah.
Do you think the fact that eBay is so easily accessible to people is one of the reasons why you haven't seen it creeping into auction houses as much?
Yes, yeah, I think that has been key. But boy, has it proved that there's a market there. I mean, if you look at some of those individual prices,
I do on a regular basis. Don't worry.
Yes, yeah, but also it's one of those things that we've all got those stories. I mean, I've got a fairly sizable collection that's sort of 30 plus years, and I don't really watch TV. When I'm at home, I'll be painting as opposed to watching TV. And it was listening to the radio, but it's now YouTube or some chaps over in somewhere called somewhere near Castle Rock called Coleraine. Occasionally I tune into that, and it's but yeah, at the same time I don't want them all dumped into a box and sent to the charity shop. And but also a lot of chaps don't really. Well, ladies as well, obviously, but it's they don't necessarily share their hobby with the rest of their family who may or may not be interested, or they don't even tell them how much they've been spending on it for a start,
Yeah.
Especially if they paid $2,000 for a Hero Quest off eBay.
Yes, yeah, and but I think we're seeing that movement as people are now sort of middle-aged, and whereas eBay, you've seen serious prices develop because you've got a very relatively tech-savvy demographic, and whereas 10 years ago they were sort of late 20s, early 30s, some of the, with people getting their first serious jobs, but now we're actually finding that people are actually, some of these people are doing seriously well and running companies, and that they don't want bog standard stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's one of these watch these space things. But yes, I'll take up your challenge of trying to get a Thunderhawk gunship on the Antiques Roadshow. That would be fantastic.
Telling you,
I don't remember how many they made of it, but I can't. I want to say it was 400.
I'm not sure it was as many as that, Jerry. Something tells me it was 200. But I can't remember.
I remember the price at the time was £400, not because it cost £400, but because that was 40,000 pence, and that just amused them at head office.
Oh yeah,
and that is the only reason it was 400 quid. Although it did come in a very nice wooden case, which I have somewhere, because I never gave it back to the bloke who built it for. Because by the time I was finished.
Would it be as nice as one of those Louis Vuitton cases we were looking at?
I would say it would almost be as good as a Louis Vuitton
as
case.
A Steve.
Here, Michael, before we get stuck in anything else, did I ever tell you the story about how our mother gave all our Star Wars toys away?
Oh, God.
I've heard that story.
Can't remember.
Loves rubbing the salt into the wound, doesn't he? So, Michael, for anybody that's looking to potentially offload some of their stuff, what's their best option? Should they reach out to someone like yourself and say, "Hey, is it worth trying to see if what this might fetch in an auction house, or is it a case of just stick it on eBay for a while yet?"
I think I'd be quite happy to advise through Antique Vault Limited, and it might be that it's the best thing for eBay, but certainly I think if you've got serious pieces, they need to be handled properly. And certainly with my own collection, I've got probably 3,000 28mm figures painted, and those are 15mm as well. To be honest, I probably, it's something that if something like that came in, we could handle it with one of our partner auctioneers or something like that, or we could even do a private treaty sale, because we do have a few relatively high-end clients who are interested. But I think we'd be entirely happy to help. And so, if it is an eBay thing, we can tell you that very, very quickly. But certainly anything serious, we'd be delighted to be of service.
And to get on question, TV. Just before we go off it, then, do you have your collection separately insured in your house, or is it just covered under your home contents?
That's a tricky thing, Jerry. Actually, I'm going to have to take more advice about that. At the moment, it's under our present home insurance.
I haven't done anything myself.
Right, make a note of that, lads. The minis are in the house somewhere.
Yeah, but things like, I just have home and contents insurance, and I remember last time I was renewing it, asking them, because I was starting to tot some things up in my head, and people probably have a rough idea that I spend too much on this. And I'm going, as far as a grouping in the house, if I have to replace this stuff, if there's a fire, whatever.
Yeah. It would be worth more than the house.
Jerry used to get a thing called wages. Now he just gets vouchers.
Well, that's second edition Warhammer, and that's signed by 2 of the 3 writers. It's not signed by Jervis Johnson, but it's signed by Richard Halliwell and Priestley. That couldn't be replaced.
No.
I don't even know if Halliwell is still alive currently, because he dropped off the radar for a long time.
Yeah, well, if he's not alive currently, I can't imagine him being alive later.
When you start getting into this and you start going, to your insurance company, I have a collection of this in the house, and they're going, well.
It's a good point, because there's a first edition rule book for Kings of War kicking around somewhere with my signature on it. That's probably worth money.
That's true, yeah.
Because that was documented on video and everything.
We have Provenance for that.
Well, it is a serious thing, and it is getting to the point now where the value is kicking up there. And I think, Jerry, to be honest, it is worth getting it insured. And because
this is
serious.
So Antiques Roadshow. I suppose you'd like to know how much you need to insure it for. If I were insuring this in the market today, I would advise to insure it for several £1,000s.
That wouldn't even cover the confrontation figures.
You're a madman! You're a madman!
But it's true, and as Michael says, there are things that we're hitting a point that are becoming niche. People are still trying to track down figures from certain companies that have gone bust or gone out of production, and the prices on those on eBay are just crawling up and up and up, and they're just unpainted figures in most cases.
Like Rackham's old minis, for example, they're pretty popular.
Exactly, it's startling when you think about how much is probably kicking around the house. Yeah. Not just mine. I mean, everybody's house.
So we could basically what we're realizing here is we could all be sitting on a Del Boy style lesser watch, in one of our lockups. Yeah.
Absolutely.
This time next year, we'll be millionaires.
Well, also, I mean, let's call it the Johnson collection. I mean, there's so much stuff there. You could literally fill a museum with it, and it's growing. There's more and more stuff, and also some of it's one-off, as you say. The 3-ups. A lot of it's been really well painted, courtesy of, but particularly John's stuff is fantastic as well. And I think we're going to see things like golden demon winners or runners up. We're going to probably get that. That's how I see the market going. And if someone like Christie's does go down that direction, or whoever, and organises, the first big sale, it's something that I've been sort of toying with for a while. But who knows? And but those are going to be the sort of objects that really, with the amazing wow factor. They've been documented, and just the top end stuff like that. But even so, I mean, looking at what you call the lower end, and that's not meant to be disparaging. It's just in terms of value. I mean, Jerry, if you wanted to replace even sort of relatively basic stuff from some of the now sort of OOP ranges you've got, how much is that going to cost on eBay?
And if it could even be found,
if it could be found.
Yeah, and your main problem, Jerry, is you keep lending stuff to people and never getting it back.
I'll get that book off you.
And don't forget your Superman DVD. Got them as well.
Oh well, Anna has to watch those first.
Right.
I'm not taking anything back until she's watched it.
That's it. I'm calling the show because I'm going to go and hunt through my drawers and see what we've got. Michael, thank you, mate. Listen, keep us posted on this because I think it is fascinating. I really am interested. I would love to run a big old auction. You know, if we could run like a big live auction some night and become like a Sotheby's. Wouldn't that be amazing? We could do it internationally via live stream, and have our bidders and all coming on, and we could auction off some of the most amazing pieces.
Little paddles.
How much commission do we get?
we have to discuss that later, but I do think you would make a very good auctioneer, Warren. I think that's got to be honest, I would be up for that. I think that if we can make that happen, that would be brilliant. And but it's one of these things that is just burgeoning at the moment.
Right. Well, I will go and pick out the best bottle of Irish whiskey that I can, and we'll head over to John Stallard's so we can get a start on this. Right, guys, look, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to spend our Sunday morning with you guys at home, but it's just great having the cogs in the actual show with us now. This is all kinds of cool. We're enjoying this. Thank you both for joining us. It's been entertaining and enlightening.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.